You're listening to live courtroom coverage of the trial of Lori Vallow Daybell from the Hidden Killers podcast and True Crime Today. Now, back to the courtroom.
The jury is not present. We want to have the witness back on the witness stand.
Yes, Your Honor.
Ready to proceed?
Status.
Defense? You ready to proceed with your cross?
Sure.
All right, you can go ahead and get ready up at the podium if you like. We'll bring the jury in. No, it looks fine. All right, the jurors can be seated when they get to their seats. If the jury is present, please be seated. You can continue with your cross-examination of this witness. Go ahead.
Detective Pillar, yesterday we were speaking of your interview with Brandon in the car, and you said it was about 25 to 30 minutes. Is that correct?
That sounds right.
And that you audio recorded it. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And at the end of that interview, you admonished Brandon to not contact Melanie. Is that correct?
There were phone calls attempted to be made to Melanie. And then after that, I encouraged him to not answer and to simply contact me if she were to contact him.
And what do you mean by the phone calls?
We tried to contact her to get her side of the story early on in the investigation, since that was the one name that he most recently had a recent relationship falling out with.
So who tried to contact her, and when was that? I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. It was during the interview in the car before I can return back to the crime scene. Brandon and I discussed what we had, and I gathered that information. We knew that one of his children was with his soon-to-be ex-wife, and we knew where the other three children were. We, at this point, did not know the full circumstances surrounding the shooting. So it was important to reach out to her, let her, Melanie know, hey, there was a shooting that just occurred, and speak with her.
So who ended up calling her? You called her or Brandon called her?
Brandon called her from his phone 3 separate times.
And she didn't answer?
No.
But you didn't attempt to call her directly?
Not during that time, no.
Okay. And so as far as you know, Brandon followed that admonition to not contact her again that day?
Yes, as we also had his phone, so.
Oh, that's right.
That made it so he couldn't.
Okay. And
that
so,
wasn't the purpose, but we had his phone.
So did you end up making contact with Melanie?
I made contact telephonically with Melanie Boudreaux at the time, now Pulowski. And yes, I was able to make contact with her.
Was that still on October 2nd, or is that the next day?
I left a message for her. I don't remember when I spoke with her specifically, but she agreed to meet with me on October 3rd, which was the following day after the shooting.
And that was at the Gilbert Police Department?
Gilbert Police Department in a private interview room, yes.
Okay. And so Melanie came and met you that day on October 3rd, is that correct?
Yes.
And you interviewed her?
Yes.
And she came in voluntarily?
Yes.
And talked to you?
Yes.
And did she ask for an attorney?
No.
And about how long was that interview, do you think?
Approximately 1 hour.
Okay.
It was a little interrupted because their youngest was with them in the room. She didn't have childcare at that time, but I believe the interview lasted for about an hour.
Okay. And did she advise you in that interview of some
Object
business
hearsay.
deals
I'm
that
going to
Brandon was involved in?
Again to hearsay.
The objection's sustained, it's hearsay.
Did you investigate anything that you learned during that interview?
Yes.
Did you investigate anything that Melanie offered to you during that interview?
Can you be more specific about what was offered?
Yeah, sure.
If you're going to offer a hearsay statement, if there, maybe have him review something that you want him to consider, if you have a written copy.
Okay. Maybe a better question is, did you follow up with anything that you learned during that interview with Melanie?
Yes.
And did you talk to her again after that 1 hour-long interview?
I did speak with her again, yes.
On the phone or in person?
The next time I had any communication with Melanie was on October 14th, so a few days after our in-person interview.
Okay, and did she contact you?
She did contact me.
And she was coming to you for help?
She was reaching out regarding some custodial issues.
She thought you might be able to help her, is that correct?
She was seeking some advice, yes.
So Brandon had testified that he provided you with a VIN number to a Jeep Wrangler in my household on October 2nd, 2019. Is that correct?
That is correct that he testified to that, yes.
And did he do that? Did he provide you with that VIN number?
I do not remember that. I do not recall being provided a VIN number. There was a lot that happened early in the investigation. I can tell you that we got the license plate for the Texas Jeep early on in our investigation, which when running a license plate, we also received the VIN number, but I do not remember specifically getting the VIN number from Mr. Boudreaux.
So where did you get the license plate number from?
From the Chandler photographs, from their incident in
So after, like yesterday, you contacted Chandler and that's where you got those from?
the images with the license plate, yes.
And what day was that you contacted Chandler in October?
When I contacted them, I can't testify to that, but I do know that I physically met with them on October 9th of 2019.
Okay. So your testimony here today is that you did not discover that the Jeep was gray in my household because of the VIN number that Brandon provided to you. Would that be fair?
Yes, that would be fair.
But you did discover it on October 9th that there was a gray Jeep in my household. Would that be fair?
Yes,
Okay. Would it also be fair to say that no one that you interviewed or talked to mentioned anything about the Jeep being gray?
the color of it being gray, no,
Okay.
not early in the investigation.
Did you search for a green Jeep with Texas plates on it?
No, there was never a green Jeep specifically searched for with a Texas license plate. That would be something we would farm out to our investigators, our civilian investigators, and to specifically ask for a green Jeep of Wrangler with a Texas license plate. I don't know what that would yield as far as results, and we didn't have enough to go after just that at that moment.
Okay. And you didn't farm that out, though? Is that correct?
At that juncture, no.
And did you search for a dark blue Jeep with Texas plates on it with a tire on the back?
Same answer, or similar answer to what I just provided.
Detective Pillar, how often or how many times would you say that you have communicated with Brandon Boudreaux in the past 5.5 years?
Your Honor, I'm going to object to asked and answered as well as potential 404B issues.
I think she asked Mr. Boudreaux those
Okay.
questions. I'll allow it, but be aware of the issues, please, that you could be opening. Go ahead.
Multiple times. I have spoken with Mr. Boudreaux multiple times.
And would you say multiple emails back and forth?
The majority of communication was either telephonic or text message. However, I do know there were emails exchanged as well.
I'm going to hand you what is proposed Exhibit 192 from the defense. Detective Pillar, do you recognize this email?
It appears to be an email that would be exchanged from Mr. Boudreaux to myself within my police department email.
And that's something to and from him to you and to you from him?
In this example you provided, yes, I don't know how long the message thread was for this.
Okay. And you recognize that as a true and correct copy of that email exchange?
Yes, from February 12th of 2020.
The defense would move to publish the email?
State would object. We're going to go into that.
We already discussed this exhibit. I'll sustain the objection. It's not being entered into evidence.
In that email, Detective, did you request that Brandon provide you with financial information regarding his ex-wife, Melanie Boudreaux?
And Your Honor, I'm going to ask to sidebar again regarding defenses.
All right.
Detective Pillar, did you request that financial information regarding Melanie from Brandon?
Yes.
And did he provide you with that information?
Yes.
And did he provide you with financial documents you requested in another email?
I know we've discussed financial documents, and everything I was sent, I believe, was via email, but I don't know what specific one you may be referring to, but I think it's safe to say, yes, that there were emails exchanged about Melanie Boudreaux, Pulowski's financial records being sent to me.
Right. So her financial gain if something were to happen to Brandon, is that correct?
That is correct.
So he also provided you with screenshots of information regarding Melanie that didn't have to do with finances. Is that also correct?
Your Honor, I'm going to object again and warn on 404A
All right.
and 405.
Sustained.
Did you read those documents when they were sent to you?
I reviewed the documents that were sent to me, yes.
And did you include those in part of your investigation?
They are included in an investigation, yes.
So on those screenshots, does Melanie give a theory of what she thinks happened on October 2nd, 2019 that you reviewed?
Not that I remember from that exchange. I'd
Okay.
have to see it, which I'm,
Your Honor, I'm going to object to hearsay and relevance.
I'm not asking for the truth of the matter. I just want to know
Hold
what
on.
he knows.
I didn't ask for argument. You can show him the document and then rephrase your question.
Okay. Yes.
thank you. Is there something specific you would like?
Go ahead and rephrase your question.
Is this one of the screenshots that Brandon sent to you? That you reviewed?
It doesn't have any email headings or footers on it. This is what appears to be a Word document, like from Microsoft Word. I can't testify that this is exactly what he sent me, if this is a attachment to the email, from what I'm looking at here.
Okay. Do you recognize it as something that you've read before? The information?
I'm not reading the whole thing. I'm simply
Sure.
reviewing what I can
Sure.
to see if
Take
it's
your time.
judging. I must say that I don't remember this. There was a lot of correspondence shared and a lot of images. But looking at this, this seems familiar with some of the allegations that I've heard throughout the investigation. However, I don't remember this specific document
Okay.
being sent to me.
So when you requested Brandon Boudreaux on this date to send you these documents, that is part of the 7 screenshots that he sent to you.
Okay.
So my question is, during that time, you were still gathering information, right?
Yes.
You were still looking at all possibilities of what really happened on that day, right?
And I'm going to object to what time period? Are we talking about February? Is there a
Yeah,
date on
can you
there?
clarify the time period?
Foundation.
Is it the February
12th.
email? February
Yes.
12th. All right, so rephrase the question with that in it.
So my question is, did you ever read the information in that screenshot that you have there before?
It is possible. If it was sent to me in an email, I likely read it, yes. But there was at the point of February 12th of 2020, there were other investigations I was working on as well.
So did you disregard the information in that during your investigation?
I'm going to object, and I think we may need to
All
sidebar
right.
again.
Yeah, let's sidebar.
Tesla for a second. What happened with the Tesla window? I know it fell out of the car and was sitting on the driveway, so where did it go from there?
The Tesla, the glass from the window that fell out of the Tesla itself was discarded.
Was what?
Thrown away. It was discarded.
Oh, it was thrown away.
Yes.
And when did that happen?
I don't recall. I believe after we were concluding our time at the scene, we had our photographs of it, was turned over to the resident, in that case, Mr. Boudreaux, to dispose of.
Okay, and it wasn't preserved for any reason?
No.
Why not?
We collected what we needed from it at that moment, and the amount of glass that was there and the images that were taken seemed sufficient at the time, and so it was simply thrown away.
Was there a hole in that window at all, like a bullet hole?
A bullet hole through the window outside of the images that have been presented that would indicate where an impact point may have been, so kind of the curvature towards the top of the glass. Outside of that, no, there was no other damage that would match about a bullet hole.
Okay. And you didn't carefully put on 2 pairs of gloves and take it to the evidence room at the Gilbert Police Department, is that correct?
Take the glass?
Correct.
That's correct.
And what about the Tesla? So what happened to the Tesla that day?
After we processed the Tesla at the scene, we transported it over to the Gilbert Police Department to further inspect indoors. Essentially, it was just one more act that we could take to better review what we had already investigated for the hours that we were outside.
And was it like towed? Did you tow it over?
No, it was, although unorthodox, it was transported by myself and followed by Detective McDermott to the property and evidence building where we had a technician standing by. Once arrival to the garage at that facility, we further looked into the bullet hole, and we weren't there very long. It was, again, another last review of the damage.
So you drove it over, is that correct?
That is correct.
And it was photographed?
Yes, we photographed the vehicle at the scene. Once at the police department, we have the surveillance cameras, but we didn't photograph it further once at the police department. We had no intention of impounding it at that time.
And it was measured?
No,
The bullet hole and things were measured? All that was done at the scene, but nothing was done at the Gilbert Police Department?
Yes,
And then it wasn't tested for the trajectory while at the Gilbert Police Department?
that's correct.
And it wasn't placed into evidence?
We did not impound the vehicle. The purpose for that was it was the victim's only vehicle at that time, similar to the smartphone that we took temporary custody of. For convenience purposes, it was ultimately turned back over to the owner, in this case, Mr. Boudreaux, both the vehicle and the smartphone.
Within a day?
Yes, approximately a day. It was a very brief period of time.
Okay. And having been a case agent hundreds of times, you must have known that if you were ever going to charge someone with this crime, then surely you would need this evidence so the defense could hire their own experts to do testing of the car and the window, right?
The crime of this caliber, and it's not uncommon for cases to develop into something more than what you initially believe, that's part of being human, part of being an investigator. We did not take the vehicle in this case. We did not have a decedent. In other words, we did not have a person who was injured or killed. We had property damage, and we were still very early in our investigation to determine what happened. So, no, we did not maintain custody of that vehicle.
So is it not in your protocol to preserve evidence?
It's in our protocol to preserve evidence.
But not in this case?
In this case, I made the decision not to maintain custody of that Tesla.
So without this evidence available, how would my experts be able to test for trajectory?
We couldn't test for trajectory with what we had. If it was here today, it's possible that you guys could test for trajectory with the advancements in technology. Again, not being somebody who is trained or certified in any type of trajectory training, I don't know how that process would even look, but we simply don't have the vehicle today as we're discussing this.
And you don't have an expert at Gilbert Police Department that's an expert in trajectory?
At that time, we did not.
Okay. And how would my ballistics expert be able to test the hole in the Tesla to determine, in fact, if it was a rifle or a handgun that was used? How would I do that now?
How would you go about?
How would I have an expert do that now?
You would hire somebody who would potentially be a specialist in this area and see if they had the ability to obtain evidence of trajectory. But how would you do that now outside of hiring somebody and doing that without the vehicle? I suppose you could not.
Is it possible to perform our own tests from pictures?
Tests? No.
And did you request any tests be performed on the Tesla itself?
Outside of trying to obtain the surveillance footage and do our best that we could with what we had for the bullet hole itself, no additional tests were made.
And no testing was done with the window either, is that correct?
You're referring to the glass that was?
Yes, the glass.
No other tests were done with the glass.
Okay. And how about the 4 pieces of the projectile that were found? Were any of those tested?
Tested for?
For what kind of bullet they came from or what kind of gun they came from?
Again, not being a munitions expert, but seeing what bullet fragments look like and what projectiles can turn into upon impact, those fragments could not determine any type of rifling, which is the marks that are made within a barrel when a weapon is shot. Because the bullet was not intact, and we had no casing, we had no gun to verify where it came from. We simply had some markings of some possible jacketing and the lead, which appeared consistent with a bullet that was fired and then, of course, was fragmented. We were satisfied that we had a individual get shot at by some firearm, be it rifle, handgun, but a firearm, eastbound to westbound, that collided and then ultimately ended up in Mr. Boudreaux's body frame. But to send it off for further testing, no, we did not send it off for further testing based on any reason that we knew we would not be able to get any viable weapon to compare it to, or any type of rifling where that would match another firearm.
Well, would it make a big difference if it wasn't a rifle at all and what Mr. Boudreaux saw was a rifle?
Can you rephrase that question?
So if you were to test it and someone to say this came from a handgun, this did not come from a rifle, that would make a big difference in the story that Mr. Boudreaux told to you, though, right?
No.
It would not?
No.
So he did not see a handgun, but if it came from a handgun, that would be contradictory, would it not?
To his statement of believing it was a rifle?
Correct.
His belief in mere observation for those split seconds of a weapon firing at him, I can't say for certain if it would have been from a handgun or a rifle. If we had an intact projectile or a shell casing, we'd have an answer to that. What we have now are bullet fragments and a bullet hole and evidence to indicate that this happened. This shooting at Mr. Boudreaux did in fact occur.
But you didn't test it?
The fragments were not tested.
Now, Detective Pillar, how many neighbors confirmed that they heard a gunshot?
Hearing a loud bang or hearing a gunshot, approximately 4, 5?
4. Do you know who those were? Who those neighbors were?
Not off the top of my head, no. From my memory.
Was that in one of your reports, that 4 neighbors heard a gunshot?
In my report, I documented the detectives who made contact with neighbors that either heard something or had electronic surveillance on their house that, although did not capture footage of the incident, captured consistent noise of a loud bang, as well as a vehicle idling for an extended period of time near their residence, which is near where the Jeep would have been parked prior to Mr. Boudreaux arriving and then upon his arrival. But it just captured audio with once again, no footage of the actual shooting.
But you say multiple neighbors. Is that what your understanding was? That multiple neighbors heard a loud noise?
Yes.
So Brandon heard a loud noise. You have the ring that was a loud noise, right? Mm-hmm. Who else?
I don't know off the top of my head.
Could it be that there was no one else, just those two?
There were other neighbors that acknowledged hearing a noise. That was a loud noise that was not a normal noise.
Were those across the street neighbors, neighbors on the other side?
I would have to refer to the detectives who interviewed individuals who said they heard something. And those detectives notated the addresses in which they heard a noise. But when I say multiple, clearly, I mean more than one person heard.
So 2 is multiple in your book. Is that correct?
In this case, we have more than 2 that have testified. But there are others that made admission.
More than 2 people have testified here that they heard a loud noise?
Yes.
And who would those be?
We have the neighbor with the Ring camera, and I forget her name. I apologize. And then we have Mr. Boudreaux, who heard that. Mm-hmm. And then we had, those are the 2 that we had so far with the loud noise and the consistent evidence.
So you would consider that multiple people. Is that correct?
But there are others within the report that acknowledge hearing the noise, yes.
Not in any report that I read, in a report that you read?
Object to testifying
Sustained.
and asked and answered and argumentative.
That's the objection sustained.
In a sworn statement that you made, Detective, you put the other neighbors confirmed they observed a gray-colored hardtop 2-door Jeep. What neighbors do you know of that said that there was a gray Jeep?
Where was that testimony? So,
in your affidavit on November 19th regarding the Jeep Wrangler, would you like to take a look?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, yes, I see where this is in the affidavit.
And earlier you had testified that no one had said the Jeep was gray at all, but in your sworn testimony there, you say that other neighbors confirmed that they observed a gray-colored, hardtop, 2-door Jeep. What neighbors would those be?
And this is the probable cause statement from...
For the infotainment center?
Yeah, for the infotainment center, but on what date?
November 19th, 2019?
November 19th, 2019? Mm-hmm. Okay, so I don't recall who specifically said that they saw the gray-colored hardtop 2-door Jeep. It was, however, at this juncture that I do know that was the vehicle we were looking at from the photographs and from the LPR hits.
It was an alleged vehicle, but that was not the vehicle that the neighbors described to you. Is that correct?
I did not have any vehicles described to me by a neighbor specifically, no.
So you swore that in your statement to take out that infotainment center to that two-door gray hardtop Jeep, right? You're the police officer. You're asking for a warrant to do this because this is your probable cause. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And you're saying in that neighbors confirmed that they saw a gray-colored hardtop two-door Jeep, but that was not true.
Suppose the one word that I could exchange from anything is a dark-colored hardtop two-door Jeep. But at this point in my investigation, I had confirmed that it was a gray-colored two-door Jeep.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Actually, you might want to hold on to that one. I'll wait. Thank you. There's something else in this affidavit that I'd like you to look at. I'll just take out what you want. Okay.
Last paragraph?
If I can know what page you're showing him.
2714.
Thank you.
It is this last paragraph, correct, Ms.
Yes.
Daybell? Okay.
Yes.
Let me just review it real quick.
Just the first underlined.
The first
part
underlined? Okay.
Of that paragraph. Have you reviewed that, Detective?
The first underline I just did. Do you want me to check the second line as well?
I would then ask to know, I'm sorry, what section you're actually showing him that's underlined?
It's just the third paragraph.
Can you show?
Your Honor, we may want to sidebar again.
All right, can I see the exhibit? For purposes of that ruling, I'm gonna have marked as 202 will be retained in the record. So that'll be, just refer to it as Exhibit 202. Please.
Just this page, whole.
Just that page that what we were talking about in the sidebar.
Detective, In preparing to investigate this crime, would you say, is it fair to say that most of the information that you gleaned is from Brandon Boudreaux?
In this initial investigation, yes.
Okay. And you were in constant contact with him during that time, in the early days of this investigation?
In the early days and then throughout the progression of the investigation.
And you were on a first-name basis, is that correct?
Yes. Again, that's not uncommon for me to do in really all my investigations.
So most people don't call you Detective Pillar?
Not typically. It depends on how the length of the investigation and the type of investigation that it is, but especially with victims or witnesses, I try to keep it casual.
Now, when you were giving back the Tesla, the window was thrown away, is that correct?
The window was discarded.
And the Tesla was given back.
To Mr. Boudreaux, yes.
Did he come pick it up, or was it driven back over there?
From what I recall, it was picked up by him at the property and evidence building.
And were there any further instructions with that? Like, now you can get it fixed, you can do anything you want with it? Like, how does that work?
Essentially, it was, yes, here's your vehicle returned. We'll be in contact regarding the investigation and my contact with the individuals you provided for follow-up.
Okay. And then that was the end of that contact with any of the evidence that was taken at the time?
On October 2nd, yes.
And the fragments of the projectile, those were taken in an evidence bag and put into evidence at Gilbert Police Department?
From the scene directly to the police department, yes. Or
Was
the
there-
property evidence building, yes.
Was there any other evidence taken to the property evidence building?
I believe there was a cigarette butt. I believe there was multiple photographs. Other physical evidence I do not recall us taking.
You don't recall what?
I don't recall taking other physical evidence from the scene off the top of.
So a cigarette butt?
I believe if a cigarette butt was, it was across the street and a neighbor thought it was inconsistent with being near his house because he didn't smoke.
Okay. Was DNA taken off of the cigarette butt?
No, I believe we still have it retained in our property evidence building.
So if you would have taken the DNA off the cigarette butt, then you might have a person who was smoking it?
We would
At the
probably
scene?
have a DNA profile of somebody who's walking down the street smoking a cigarette, yes.
So you didn't really think it was connected to this incident necessarily?
No,
Okay. And why was it collected?
because it was within the crime scene tape at this time, and the detective who spoke with the neighbor who provided the information thought it should be collected.
And during the course of your investigation, you never discovered that Brandon Boudreaux was a smoker, right?
No.
Or that Alex Cox was a smoker, right?
No.
Did you ask Mr. Boudreaux if he owned any firearms at that time on October 2nd?
I believe so.
And do you remember what his answer was?
I don't believe he had any firearms in his possession that were his.
And you said the house was cleared. Did someone go through the house and cleared the house?
I knew this from officers telling me, and then again, I had to watch all the body-worn camera footage for media release and redaction purposes. So I learned the officers did clear the house prior to detective arrival.
And they went through the garage as well?
Yes.
And when you came up on the scene, was the garage open or closed?
The garage was open.
And do you know about what time you had arrived there?
Approximately 10:30. The call was made at approximately 9:13 in the morning, and detectives arrived approximately 10:30 a.m.
And when do you think that you left, when you initially left, did you leave your car there because you drove the Tesla? Is that correct?
When I left the scene, once we took the Tesla to the property building, yes, my assigned vehicle was left there secured. And then, again, a detective followed me to the property and evidence building where we met with property technicians upon arrival.
In your interview with Melanie, she provided you with some information and then called you back, you said, around October 14th? Is that correct?
Yes.
And at that time, did you just refer her to an attorney?
I listened to her grievances, and then her concern was primarily about the custody of their children. And I referred her to speak with an attorney regarding custodial issues.
Because it's not something that you really give advice about, right? Like as the detective.
That's not my expertise, but I do encourage people to speak with attorneys who specialize in family matters.
But she came to you because were you aware that Brandon had not returned the children to her?
Sustained as irrelevance.
About how long was that conversation that you had with Melanie around the 14th?
10 minutes.
Was that on the phone or in person?
It was by phone.
So she was seeking help, but you really didn't have any for her, is that correct?
Against relevance.
Sustained.
That's all I have, Your Honor.
All right. Redirect.
Yes. Before we start. All right, Detective, I'm going to go back to some of the questions that we started with yesterday. That's kind of also come in through today. During your investigation and through testimony you heard here, did we have a witness, Robert Abitamarco, that just said the Jeep was dark colored?
Yes.
No specifics of what color that was, just dark?
Correct.
And then we've heard Brandon thought that the vehicle was some sort of camo or green color.
Yes.
And then eventually, we also learned that through statements made by Brandon Boudreaux to both Officer Rob and yourself that he believed this case was tied to an incident in Chandler. Did you learn that Lori Vallow, in fact, had a dark-colored Jeep?
Yes.
And when you were able to obtain those photographs, did you learn that the Jeep was then gray?
Yes.
You were asked about a probable cause statement that you wrote on November 19th of 2019. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Was that after you learned about the gray vehicle, the gray Jeep that Lori Vallow had on July 11th of 2019 in Chandler, Arizona at that incident?
Yes.
And in that probable cause statement, do you just in fact say that it was a dark-colored or gray-colored Jeep?
Yes.
You don't actually say that a specific neighbor said that or where that information came from?
Correct. I was working with multiple detectives.
So you're using all of the different information that you gleaned, which included the fact that this defendant owned a gray Jeep Wrangler with Texas license plates, and that was put into your statement?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, you were asked a lot about the measurements of the Tesla and trajectory. Did Brandon Boudreaux stop at the time of the shooting and put down a little ticky-tack marker and say, better note this for later so I can tell the detectives exactly where my vehicle was when I was shot?
No, he did not.
Did Brandon Boudreaux get out of his car and go over and mark the exact end of the Jeep so that you would know exactly where that was when he was shot?
No, he did not.
Did he go over and tell the person, whoa, I gotta wait and find out exactly how this rifle barrel is sticking out of the back of your Jeep so that later on, they'll be able to document the height, the angle, if it's up, if it's down, if it's a little to the right or left, so that later on, they'll be able to do some trajectory?
No,
So none of that happened?
none of that happened.
Were you surprised he didn't do that?
Not at all.
So you did receive information from another neighbor that they saw the Jeep in the approximate same location of where Brandon Boudreaux saw it,
Yes.
parked there idling, running,
Yes.
same direction as Brandon gave,
Yes.
the same Texas plate as Brandon gave,
Yes.
and same dark tint as Brandon said.
Yes.
So when you talk about this only being Brandon, that's not accurate, right?
Correct.
In fact, Abbott Tamarco said he didn't even know Brandon because he just moved in, right?
Correct.
And so ultimately, when we're talking about trajectory, without knowing all of those specifics, were you aware of any way to recreate how the rifle was held, what angle it was at when it fired that shot into the Tesla, not knowing where the Tesla exactly was either?
No, unable to determine that.
You were asked about the glass as well. When you package items, you put them in a box, a bag, a plastic bag, something like that, right? Depending on the piece of evidence you're collecting.
Yes.
Did you have any way to keep that glass from never disintegrating anymore so that it wouldn't change from the way it looked on October 2nd if you impounded it?
No, with shattered glass, it would continue to shatter. We have no way to package it to stay in its form when it's already broken.
So when you're talking about impounding that item or just throwing it away, if you put it in a box and you travel it to impound and then somebody throws it up into wherever it goes, could you say if you pulled it back out 5 years later that it looked exactly like it did that day when it fell onto the ground?
Absolutely not.
So is that why photographs were taken there?
Photographs, yes.
You were asked a lot about the interview of Brandon. During that audio recording. Have you listened to that?
I have.
You told us you were in your vehicle, right?
That's correct.
And was your AC blowing very hard?
It was a warm day out, so yes, we were both. I was sitting in the driver's seat, he was in the passenger, and the vehicle was on with AC running.
Did Brandon talk soft at times?
Yes.
In listening to the recording, is it often difficult to hear what he's saying?
Yes.
And would you agree that the best evidence would be the actual recording versus someone's interpretation of what they believe he was saying?
Yes.
When you were considering the evidence at the scene, in addition to Robert Abotamarco, when you looked at that Ring camera footage that we saw in court from Lynette Mendoza, did the black vehicle that you see appear to be consistent with a Tesla?
Yes.
Was it driving in the general direction of or towards Brandon Boudreaux's home on that video?
Yes.
And was there a timestamp showing when you heard that loud bang after that vehicle went by?
Yes.
When was that?
It was at 9:13 and some seconds.
And was the 911 call made by Brandon around 9:14?
Yes.
So was that another piece of evidence that was considered by you in corroborating what Brandon had told you and what Robert Abotamarco had seen and what the physical evidence told you?
Yes.
When you were looking at the Tesla itself, you advised us that you have seen bullet holes into vehicles previously,
Yes.
and you have seen fragments of projectiles previously.
Yes.
When you looked at that bullet hole and those fragments, did you have any question as to whether or not that Tesla had been shot?
No question at all.
Did you ever recover a gun that you knew was used in this?
No.
Would the fact that it was one type of rifle over a different type of rifle change the fact that Brandon Boudreaux's vehicle was shot that day?
No.
Could a handgun kill someone?
Yes.
Could a rifle kill someone?
Yes.
You were asked yesterday about LPR, license plate reader. Do you recall that?
I do recall that.
And we had heard from Tom Miller about the DEA license plate readers.
That's correct.
Is that the only license plate readers that exist?
No.
In this investigation, well, the defendant had asked you about there being no other license plate readers showing this Jeep. Is that accurate?
That is not accurate.
Was there a LPR hit for the Jeep Wrangler Texas plate LWD 0997 in a city south of Rexburg, Idaho on September 30th of 2019 at about 8:10 p.m.?
Yes.
Was there an LPR hit in Idaho for the Jeep Wrangler license plate LWD 0997 on US Highway 20 near Rexburg, Idaho at 3:54 and 4:28 a.m. on October 3rd?
Yes.
Would that again be consistent with other evidence that you learned in this case from other individuals?
Yes.
You were asked a bit about a cast report done by Nick Balance. Do you recall that?
I do.
Did you create that?
I did not create that report.
Did you provide some of the cell phone records that we admitted and talked about that you obtained through search warrants to Mr. Balance?
Yes.
And did information that he gleaned from that and that he made into that report that you reviewed appear consistent again with a timeline of that Jeep leaving Idaho on the 30th of September and being down in Arizona on October 2nd of 2019?
Yes, it did.
You were asked about a lot of different emails and information that you had with interactions that you had with Brandon Boudreaux. Do you recall that?
I do recall that, yes.
And would it be fair to say, Detective, that at the time of February of 2020, you were investigating multiple cases?
Yes, that is accurate.
Would it be fair to say that in February of 2020, you were also investigating multiple cases with other agencies involving Melanie Boudreaux?
Yes.
At the time of this shooting, we have discussed that this defendant and her brother, Alex Cox, were living in Rexburg, Idaho, correct?
Correct.
Were you then working with the Rexburg Police Department to help obtain information from Rexburg and other counties around there in relation to this investigation?
Yes.
So in any time when you were obtaining search warrants or continuing your investigation, were you pulling in information being provided to you from people such as the DEA LPR reader,
Yes.
Fremont County LPR readers,
Yes.
information being obtained by police up in Idaho
Yes.
from search warrants that they were executing,
Yes.
as well as search warrants that you executed up there on the Jeep?
Correct.
Was all of that put together when you were determining whether or not you had information to corroborate what Brandon Boudreaux told you on October 2nd of 2019?
Yes. It was a collective effort.
Although you are the case agent in this matter because it occurred in Gilbert, did you have to rely heavily on aid from the Rexburg Police Department and other agencies to obtain evidence in Idaho?
Yes.
And are those detectives in a better position to discuss things such as storage units or burner phones that were purchased up there?
Yes, they are.
Although you are familiar with those and they were all relevant to this investigation, would it be fair to say that since they obtained it, they're in the better position to testify as to it?
Absolutely.
Thank you. I have no other questions for this witness.
Are there any questions for this witness from any member of the jury? If so, please pass those down. I see at least one. Before I ask these, are there any other juror questions? All right. In your experience, is it unusual for witnesses to confuse colors or not remember them accurately?
Yes. Do I answer this for you, Your Honor?
I'll let the parties follow up on that if they need to. The next question is, were the attempted phone calls to wife recorded during the in-car interview of Brandon on the day of the shooting? I guess, let's clarify, did you record those phone calls?
To the second question, yes, those calls were recorded.
And were voicemails left explaining the situation?
A voicemail was left requesting a response for a call back, not explaining the situation. That was from Brandon. And then I know I later called and left a message explaining my involvement as a detective who wanted to talk to Melanie Boudreaux at the time. And she later responded, and the interview happened the next day.
All right. Follow up on that question from the defense, on those three questions from the defense?
No, Your Honor.
From the state?
In terms of colors and not remembering them accurately, You said it's not unusual for a witness to not remember always a color. Is that due to just sort of the circumstances surrounding what's happening when they're trying to observe these things like a vehicle?
Yeah, so I'll answer this in a couple parts. It is not uncommon for people to commonly mistake black for white or red for blue or different colors, assuming they're not colorblind to begin with. You amplify that situation, for lack of better words, in a traumatic situation, going out to multiple violent scenes, or even not a violent scene, just an emotional scene, maybe between a domestic dispute. It is quite common that colors for vehicles or clothing or hairstyles or hair color are mistaken, especially when you add the traumatic element to it. So.
No other questions?
All right, you can step down.
Thank you, Your Honor.
State can call its next witness.
Thank you.
There's more live courtroom coverage coming up. Press subscribe now so you don't miss a second from the Hidden Killers podcast and True Crime Today.